Greetings, brothers and sisters. For the past month or so, I've been moving towards making content ahead of time. And so I often miss out on smaller stories or topical stories. So I'm just going to put this up today. I've already put up a video here today. But Hunter Biden indicted on gun charges. GOP Republicans argue indictment should have gone further. Legal experts say charges against Hunter Biden are rarely brought. Hunter Biden faces up to 25 years in prison. Here are the details of the charges. Here's the article here. They're covering it here on, NBC News. And then the New York Post. Hunter Biden indicted on 3 new counts of illegally possessing a firearm while addicted to drugs after plea deal collapses. Here they're covering it on Fox. And so this is the start of something with Hunter Biden, right? This is the start of what could be a long list of criminal charges against him. And things are closing in on him and JoJo Magoo. There was one other thing that I want to show you with this. One of my viewers sent me this today on a Facebook message.
And Kristen, Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post had a fact check about Joe Biden from earlier this month, noting that Hunter Biden admitted in court in July that he was in fact paid substantial sums from Chinese companies. Kessler wrote, Hunter Biden reported nearly $2.4 million in income in 2017 and $2.2 million in income in 2018, most of which came from Chinese or Ukrainian interests. But this directly goes against what Joe Biden said in the debate in 2020 with Donald Trump. Take a listen.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China.
Once you
None of
became
that
vice president,
is true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
So it's from 2 different debates, but, I mean, Trump was right.
So this is from Morning Joe. I have my concerns. David Ignatius, who cares how to pronounce it, says Biden shouldn't run again. This is the most pro-Biden show on the internet, as far as on the mainstream media, as far as I know. She has just slathered all over Joe Biden and his accomplishments. I mean, they're really bad. They're the worst, as far as I know, as far as I've seen. But they are, true Biden fans, and this is what they're saying.
Let's bring in columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post, David Ignatius.
Well, David,
There it is, Ignatius.
have official Washington
It looked like he just took a nap. He's
talking, certainly the White House talking. Your latest opinion piece in the Washington Post also has my wife talking, David, and I don't know that you'd like to hear what she has to say, but you may. Go ahead.
The
Nika.
piece is entitled, President Biden Should Not Run Again in 2024. And in it you write, quote, Biden wrote his political testament in his inaugural address. When our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. Mr. President, maybe this is that moment when duty has been served.
what? Like, come on! You're saying Biden did it? He's saying he did his best. This is his best.
Biden would carry 2 big liabilities into a 2024 campaign. He would be 82 when he began a second term. And according to a recent Associated Press and ORC poll, 77% of the public think he is too old to be effective for 4 more years. Because of their concerns about Biden's age, voters would sensibly focus on his presumptive running mate, Kamala Harris. She is less popular than Biden with a 39.5% approval rating. According to polling website 538, Harris has many laudable qualities, but the simple fact is that she has failed to gain traction in the country or even within her own party. I hope Biden has this conversation.
I mean, they're in a disaster situation, which makes me kind of giddy. Not that it makes a difference, not that I want Trump, but this is great.
Conversation with himself about whether to run and that he levels with the country about it. It would focus the 2024 campaign. Who is the best person to stop Trump? That was the question when Biden decided to run in 2019, and it's still the essential test of a Democratic nominee today. So, David, what are you really saying here? Because if you look at Biden's track record and the fact that he has beaten Trump, I don't know why you would question his ability to beat him again. There are other presidents who are later in years, including the Republican presumptive nominee. Is this really about Kamala Harris?
She's really upset. She's trying not to show it.
So, Mika, you summarized my argument, what led me to write this piece, just right. I admire many things that President Biden has done in domestic and foreign policy. I do think that legacy, and at the center of his legacy, is the fact that he stopped Trump. He stopped him in 2020. He stopped Trump supporters in the midterm elections. He's mobile.
He didn't do that. He didn't do any of that, right? He did none of that, right? Whatever they did was about, let's say Joe Biden legitimately had those votes. Not saying he did it or didn't, doesn't matter. It wasn't votes for him. We know there was no support. There's no enthusiasm behind him. You know, the people would have voted for him because they hated Trump. There's lots of people who hate Trump. And so I believe it's possible that Joe Biden could have actually beat him just because of how many people hated Trump, and how for 4 years they made it their mission, you know, after the post-COVID thing and all these things as well, you know, everything that was happening then, to get rid of Trump or whatever that was, you know, who knows with how, you know, whatever. But it had nothing to do with Biden. Biden has not been a competent leader. Nobody really can believe this guy's running things. In fact, part of his appeal was that he wouldn't try to do it all himself. Like, Trump was seen as somebody who had gone rogue and wasn't being handled, wasn't being controlled, wasn't being presidential, and that Biden would, you know, he says all the time, I'll get in trouble with my handlers. I mean, he doesn't say handlers, but, you know, that's, you know. So the best you could say about Biden was he was a game manager, like a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over, you know, but isn't a star, like somebody who goes out there and plays solid football but isn't a star, right? But that isn't, you know, that isn't accurate, right? Because he did turn the ball over. He's a walking gaffe. He's shot himself in the foot, and he's had 4 years of a bad presidency, and it's going to be hard to sell this guy again. Like, everybody sees it. But Kamala is way worse. Nobody's ever liked Kamala. Kamala would have never been as successful as Biden. He chose her because he committed to choosing a woman and then choosing a woman of color. Those were things he promised as his running mate, and she was the best choice because of all the different demographics that she represents. But nobody likes her. Like, she just isn't liked even in her own demographics, right? She's blatantly unliked. And she has zero chance of winning an election on her own. And so it would be a disaster for them if Biden was around for a couple of years. He died and they had Kamala, and then they went to run her again. And, you know, I mean, things would go south on her so quickly, and she would be more hated than Hillary Clinton. She is Hillary Clinton in a Kamala Harris suit.
The Justice Department that is now bringing Trump to accountability. I worry that all those achievements are at risk. And it seemed to me through this summer, I haven't gone anywhere in the country, I haven't talked to any group of people where this issue of whether President Biden should run again hasn't been a centerpiece of conversation. It doesn't get into the newspapers. It doesn't get much on TV except Fox News, which is obsessed with it. And I thought that it was time to raise that question. And
you know, why aren't people asking a legitimate president a legitimate question, not a legitimate president, a legitimate question that this guy is too old and he seems senile. Like, he seemed like he has dementia now. I mean, he has something. He's deteriorating, and even 2019, he was deteriorating then. He should have never been the nominee. And they forced him as the nominee, right? And now it's coming back to bite him in the ass, and they don't know what to do about it. And now that this is out there, and they're covering it on MSNBC and all this other stuff, it's not going away, right? I'll revisit this maybe. Let's see if Mika gets into it here.
It talks a lot about Trump, but when it comes to Joe Biden, people say, man, he's too old to run, isn't he? I mean, he's not really going to run. When I say every discussion, I don't mean 99% of the discussions. Every discussion. We got it. I asked Reverend Al if he was hearing it all the time on our show this past week. He's hearing it as well. So, we often will.
It's a huge liability, and they don't need to keep him, right? Because he was never a star. He never was popular. He never was somebody that people were like their first choice. He's like a backup college, like he's a backup school, right? Backup quarterback. Like he's the person that you get stuck with, like because your first choice didn't want you, right? I've been covering Hunter Biden now for a while, and I enjoy his existence. Like he's made me happy a lot because he's the most successful crackhead. He's the crackhead of a former vice president and a current president. And, all of it. All of it that's Hunter, him being a painter, him impregnating a stripper named Alice from Arkansas, and that whole thing. I mean, it's just funny. A lot of funny, a lot of great things, a lot of, moments of truth and how much they've covered all this up and how embarrassing it is for them to be them, right? Like the mainstream media and all of them. And this doesn't vindicate or validate Trump. Let's make that clear. Trump is his own scumbag. Trump has his own scumbag children, and he's got his own scumbag son-in-law, and they made bank under Trump's presidency. Trump and his family made out on his presidency, and nobody's challenging that. Like, nobody's going after that and the fortune that he made. They're going after more petty things with Trump, just like they're going after more petty things with Hunter Biden. But the walls are closing in on JoJo Magoo because, the only thing they could do is pretend that this stuff wasn't ever going to happen. That, if they're calling Trump a criminal, well, now Joe Biden's son's going to be a criminal, right? I mean, this is criminal behavior that Biden's associated with. They're admitting he lied about the criminal behavior. He's got multiple aliases. There's now an impeachment on him, and they can say it's all right-wing motivated, but Democrats, 33% of them are in favor of JoJo Magoo running, and 66% of them are not. And that is an overwhelming majority of just Democrats. That say nothing about independents, right? If they could pull Trump, I mean, that would be the wise things for the Republicans, because anybody else would beat Biden. I mean, practically anybody else, because he's just not there. And so then they look down the line, and, Kennedy's now talking about running as an independent, which I'll cover in a couple of days or whatever that is. But he's talking about running as an independent. And, if they open this up and Biden has to withdraw, then they have a real primary and Kennedy gets to debate. And, this one guy who would probably be their best bet, Gavin Newsom, who's done a disastrous job. He can't run on his record in California, but he's much more, like a smooth talker. He's going to be more likable than Kamala. But he said he wasn't going to run, that Kamala was next in line. And so if Kamala is their guy, right, I mean, that's a disaster. And, so the walls are kind of closing in on him, and they're starting to admit that this guy shouldn't run. People are all talking about, they're saying, right, in terms of, all these MSNBC reporters are all whispering about this. And, it's about perception. And the perception is he's too old and shouldn't run. And he could still maybe squeak by about, and win against Trump, but that's, giving whatever they're able to do to rig it. I don't even see how that's a possibility as much this time. And it's going to become more and more like this guy said about Kamala, and they all are acknowledging it finally, reality. Like, we all knew about this 5 years ago. And now they're finally saying, yeah, this is true, which is what always happens, right? And so that's great. So I just want to do a short video here, especially when the Democratic Party is up against it because how bad they suck. And not that I'm a Republican, not that I want Trump, because I don't, but, I certainly want to see this stuff happen. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.